Hello, and welcome to Ending Physician Overwhelm. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Mello. I'm a family and obesity medicine physician, as well as a certified life coach for physicians. In this podcast, we talk about how the learned habits of people-pleasing, perfectionism, and a lack of boundaries show up in our lives and how they contribute to burnout, exhaustion, and overwhelm. The healthcare system is broken, my friends, but let's not wait for it to be fixed in order to feel better. Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to another special guest episode. Today, I'm so excited to have Dr. Toyosi Onwuemene with me. She is a board-certified hematologist, a clinician researcher, and an assistant professor at Duke University. She completed medical school and residency at Duke prior to her Hematology Fellowship at Northwestern, and also has a master's in clinical investigation. She specializes in rare thrombotic disorders with the goal of enabling early diagnosis and treatment to prevent complications. And in addition to these roles, Dr. Onwuemene is a professional coach for academic clinicians looking to build a research program, but lacking the mentorship and support to succeed. Dr. Toyosi, welcome to the show. I'm so excited you're here.
Megan, thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great. Well, let's just kind of dive in. I was trying to remember if I had other folks who were really academic medicine. I might have had one or two on the show, but we're really going to kind of dive into that aspect today. And, I really think of academic medicine as kind of its own world with a unique set of challenges that are different from, kind of the non-academic clinical practice of medicine. And I'm curious, when did you sort of know that you were interested in research and really want to go that academic route?
Megan, thanks for asking that question. When I think about it, I think it really went back all the way to really medical school and residency. I think I always knew I would stay in the academic setting because I didn't want to be bothered with business things. I was like, let somebody else take care of the money.
Yeah.
I just want to see patients. And so I kind of knew that I would stay in academia. I don't think I knew I would stay in research. So interestingly, I've done research throughout my, working up to medical training and during medical training. So it's always kind of been part of what I did. So I think I always assumed I would be doing it. But then when I started out in my faculty position and I said, hey, I want to do research, then people started saying, well, then you don't have funding and you don't have publications and you're not qualified, essentially is what they told me. And I think I didn't realize that I was doing all this research, so to speak, but I really wasn't getting the research leadership training that I needed. And I didn't recognize that there were all these things that would all of a sudden become a barrier to participation. So really, I've always wanted to be in research. I've always been in research, but I think when I started talking to people in my faculty position about being in research, they were asking, do you have what it takes to lead a research program? And I think the answer really was no, I wasn't qualified.
Yeah, it wasn't the traditional path. Reminds me of, as a parent, thinking, oh, maybe my 7-year-old might like to play softball or something like that. And then you quickly find out it's too late. Right. It's too late at 7 to get them signed up for something. And it's like, really? Do we really want it to be that way? Right. You had experience. You just weren't perhaps in a pathway, a predetermined pathway that people had decided was the route. Is that right?
I agree. I think that's such a great metaphor. I think it's like college starts in kindergarten.
Right.
Let's forget about playing in the sandbox. Let's just be ready.
Right.
I think what does happen is that we're engaged in clinical training, right? We're spending at least a decade, maybe more, and we're really focused on patient care, and it's hard to do that, and it takes a lot of time. What we're not doing at the same time is being engaged in research and research leadership to the extent that, say, our PhD colleagues are. And so I think this is a problem for many clinicians. And for many of us, we are engaged in research activities and we think it's enough. We are applying for some grants here and there. We're publishing manuscripts here and there. But I think we don't understand how much is really needed to really show that level of research leadership, especially when we're being compared to PhD colleagues. Yeah. So I think it's a problem for many clinicians. And it's okay that we don't have the training because, we've been doing clinical and that was important. But what it does mean is an acknowledgement that now you're kind of starting afresh in this space and you're now going to kind of make an investment in getting that training, whatever way that you can.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting because, I think so many of us in the practice of medicine come to feel like this is all I can do. This is all I know how to do. I've been really highly trained in my little branch of medicine, and we have a lot of fear, like I can't do anything else. And sometimes that's, somebody having, kind of panicky thoughts about needing to leave medicine or, needing to leave a certain job. But, we're discounting the fact that we're such good learners, right? And that it's not too late, really, ever to decide this is something I want to add, and I need some skills around that.
Absolutely. I think it's that we've been, in a sense, at the bottom of the totem pole for so long.
Mm-hmm.
We finally get to the end of our clinical training, and you know what? We're pretty good at the clinical things. We're good. And then for someone to say, hey, you suck at this piece and you're going to need to start over, it's hard. And I have many people saying, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to the bottom again. Mm-hmm. And I think it does take reframing and not thinking about it as starting from the bottom again. Because to be honest, it's great that we get to start from the bottom in so many things because it's an opportunity to grow in a way that we haven't grown before. And so I think it's important for us to embrace that we haven't done it before. We do need to acquire skills. And yes, we're going to suck when we start, but it's okay. It's part of the growth process. And we're leading while we're learning. So we're learning leaders. And it doesn't mean that we can't still lead while we're learning all the pieces that we need to.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. When we have guests on the show, we spend a lot of time talking about burnout and overwhelm and, kind of sharing our stories of how we got here to where we are now. And so I'd love for you to share your story, as you're sort of navigating this journey of wanting to be able to incorporate research. What were you finding in terms of your experience of sort of feeling burnt out or overwhelmed? What was that like for you?
Sure. I would say that when I really started 10 years ago and I started my first faculty job, I knew I didn't want to do patient care 100% of the time. I just knew that. I think I've always been interested in many things. But when I came in, and interviewing all over the place, I finally found one place that actually would support my goal of doing research. They're like, well, you're not qualified, but we'll give you this job and you can make it work. And as long as you make it work, we'll support you. So it was the only place I found that did that. It worked for our family. And so I started my job and I started with my people pleasing attitude. I mean, I really wanted to get what I wanted out of it. There was someone who was willing to mentor me and I just, went to work. At the time, I had a 2-year-old and I was pregnant with my baby, and it just was a hard time. But there I was trying to prove that I was worthy. And so, I was working around the clock. I was doing a clinical job, seeing patients 5 days a week. And then at nights and on the weekends, I would be trying to make the research thing happen. And then, of course, the baby was born. And then I was also taking care of a newborn at the time. So it was really hard. And I never wanted anybody to know how much I struggled, because many times I ran into conversations where people would say, oh, she has a baby. And then they would just automatically count me out of things. And so it was very I was definitely running the treadmill and showing up as I've got this. I'm good. Everything is fine. So I continued and I had some successes along the way, but I did definitely get to a point where people would say, hey, this is great for your career. You should do this. And I would take on a role. And this is great for your career. And I would do it. And, there would be no resources that would come with it. So then I would just be adding more to the time, burning the candle at both ends.
Why don't you lead this committee and you do this project and all this unpaid work? And we're not going to cut down your clinic, right? Or change anything. No. It'd just be good for you. Yeah, no, such a common.
Yes. And I would say, hey, what support comes with it? And they would say, oh, no, there's no support. Do I get more money? No, actually, what happens is we move your effort around. It was just always so complicated.
Yeah.
But I did it.
There's no budget. There's no budget for that. Yeah.
So there's never any budget. I took on roles and it finally got to the pandemic. Actually, so pre-pandemic, I started doing some work with a coach. I had the sense that I needed a coach. I couldn't even tell you exactly why I felt I needed a coach. I just was like, I need a coach. So I started working with a coach. And so we got to the pandemic. I was in this medical director role, which, oh my goodness, it was rough. It was very rough.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get any resources to do it. It was pandemic time. We'd lost most of our nursing staff. And, all the blame fell on me. And
Mm.
I did work hard, and it was challenging. It was tough times. I may have said things that maybe other people didn't appreciate. But at the end of the day, I think it was just that it finally came up into this situation that was really, really bad, where I had members of my staff, actually not really my staff, because I'm responsible, but in charge of nobody, right?
Right,
And so
right.
I came
You
to
don't
this,
hire and fire, really.
no, but you're
Run the
responsible
HR
for
stuff. Yeah.
everything.
Uh-huh.
And so I finally got into this situation where I felt like I was being undermined by the people I was working with. I made mention of it to my supervisor. I didn't get the support I needed. And finally, it just got to a situation where I sent an email that ultimately got escalated all the way to like the highest levels of physician leadership. And all of a sudden, people were calling me into the office. And it was just, and I think I got to a point where I was like, here I am not sleeping at night. And here I am being undermined in my daily work. I hate what I'm doing. And now people are treating me poorly and blaming me for all of it. And so actually, I quit the position. I didn't quit my job, though at the time, I think it was bad enough that I was just like, I don't even want to do this job anymore. But I definitely did quit the space. And I think it was just that I was so sick trying to take on all these roles, not sleeping at night, doing all this work to make people happy. And they were not happy. In fact, I feel like they put me on a cross and nailed me to it.
Oh,
And I
God.
think I finally decided that it wasn't for me. And I quit the space. And that was one of the biggest and most important moves that I made. And it was very hard in the moment, but it was important because it was kind of like I was reaching breaking point, honestly, and there was nobody to support me. But I was trying to impress people, and nobody was impressed by me. Or maybe they were, who knows? But it's not the point.
Yeah.
But it was a hard time. And
visibly mad and frustrated and
yes,
pointing
and
at
blaming
you.
me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, but I'm trying to do this for you. And why am I bothering if you're not even impressed? Yeah. So that was the beginning of the end of that, but also the beginning of me as my own advocate and the leader of my own career and the leader of my own experience in academic medicine. And it's been a beautiful journey, and it continues.
Yeah. And tell me, I don't know if this is a challenge for you, and this comes up with many of my physician clients, where we often feel we are responsible for, kind of all the experiences that our patients have as well. So not simply their medical care and helping guide them through decisions, but the challenges that they may face in terms of, insurance issues or the front desk or, waiting, months for an appointment. When you think back about, kind of people-pleasing behaviors, do you think that you are also taking on, kind of the stressors of patients as well as kind of the people that you were responsible for?
I would say I was probably more taking on the responsibilities and the burdens of the people I was working with, even though I wasn't necessarily in charge of them. And I think that did get me into trouble. A couple of my staff had health issues that they let me know about. Then I couldn't pretend I didn't know. I really did care. I really did care. So yes, I was working extra hard to cover for them in ways that, honestly, they didn't ask me to. And I wasn't even sure was appreciated. But yes, I definitely took on all those burdens.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's this such a common space that we get into, right? Of wanting to really kind of, be responsible. Like, okay, you've got this challenge. I'm going to help. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make it so your schedule is this way, and really kind of feeling like you're bending over backwards. And meanwhile, you're experiencing this where everybody's upset, everybody's pissed off, and because you're the voice, kind of that the people you're responsible for see, and the voice often, advocating, kind of up the chain as well. It's this very stressful dynamic for people to be into, like, I'm doing all this work, I'm trying to help, I care about these people as my team members, right? And then just feeling like everything is coming at you.
Absolutely. And for me, that was one of the things I really needed to work through, was just my tendency toward people pleasing,
Mm-hmm.
because I was bending over backwards to make things happen, but not even sure that what I was doing was actually meaningful to the people I was caring for.
Yeah.
And it definitely was hurting me in a way that I didn't voice out. And at the same time, I was miserable. And that's what people could see, that I was
Mm-hmm.
miserable. And so,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, they didn't enjoy me in that space. I didn't enjoy being in the space. It was a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely, I was trying so hard
Yeah.
to
And how did
please, and it
you
wasn't working.
how did you come to that realization that that people pleasing component was really a problem? Because I think, it's very easy to feel that energy right when you're in the space of like, I'm working so hard to make everybody happy. I'm miserable. Everyone's upset. They're all complaining. Like, how did you identify that, oh, wait a minute. I'm thinking that I need to do all this when really that's not what my job is, and whether we call that that people pleasing or not, because people don't always use that same word. How did that come to light for you?
Mm. So it was really a lot of the work I did in coaching. So again, prior to this whole incident, I had started doing work, and
Mhm.
we did one of these kind of, I think it's personality type tests, and it was a people map test. And one of my strengths was as a I don't think it's people pleasing, but that's all I think about it right now. But just about the desire to serve people, the desire to put people first, and so
Mhm.
it had been coming up a lot in our coaching sessions as a challenge that I needed to stop and look at. And so, we were having conversations around reframing, well, but what is needed? And who needs this? And who said it's important? So I'd been doing that work. And I think in getting to the space where I was so miserable at work, I recognized that I was trying to please, but I think
Mm.
until that big thing happened, I didn't realize how much the people I was trying to please were not pleased, how much my efforts were futile.
Yeah.
And so it was helpful to just stop and just reassess. And it was good because a lot of the work I had done before prepared me for that moment.
Hmm.
And I think to some extent, the work I had done before brought me to that moment. Because otherwise, I think I would have kept going until maybe I ran myself into the ground or something.
Yeah. And so you had left that role, right, the director role, and said, I'm going to keep doing work, but I'm not going to be responsible for these things anymore. What was the rest of, kind of that early transition like for you? If we were watching, you changing in this way and sort of realizing, I need to let go of this people pleasing stuff. I need to, really take control back and be my own advocate. What would I have seen going on, and what was going on, kind of on the inside?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. Um, I don't know. I don't know what people would have seen on the outside. I do know that I definitely, from my perspective, and I think this was the wrong way to look at it, I felt more selfish. I felt like I
Hmm.
was like, how can I not be thinking about what everybody else is doing? But it was also important that I left the space. So I stopped looking to see who is worried, who is sad, who is afraid, who's crying, who's anxious. It was just important that I distanced myself from that while I took time to heal. And so
Hmm.
I think people would have seen it as me kind of focused just on my own work. And that's where I
Mm.
was. Because I think out of this space also came the realization that I'm only in control of me. I can only clearly move me forward. And if people want to move with me, great. But trying to make people move forward, and this again was the component of people pleasing, where I started to recognize that I was actually sort of being manipulative because I couldn't control them. And
Hmm.
so in trying to please them to get them to give me a certain outcome, I was trying to manipulate things. So when I let go of that and I started just focusing on me, and gosh, I had so much to do, so much to work on, then I think I started growing in leaps and bounds. And I looked like I actually became really productive because I stopped spending all this time twisting and turning to try to make people happy. And I just focused on moving things forward. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm so glad you mentioned that comment too about like I felt really selfish. Like I had to kind of work through that space because that is such a barrier for people, right? We don't go from putting everyone else's needs first to putting ourselves on the list without having to work through those thoughts of like, gosh, thinking of myself is really selfish. It's really wrong. It's really egotistical. It feels kind of yucky. So I'm so glad that you highlighted that part of it, because I bet you don't feel that way now. And I bet that you don't feel like it's wrong anymore to be your own advocate and be taking care of yourself.
Absolutely. I think what I realized was that if I'm healthy, then things work. When I'm not healthy, things don't work.
Mm,
And sometimes part of the hyper focus on other people outside of me was not being willing to look inward and do my work, do the
yeah,
work of growing, do the
yeah,
work of expanding. And so that's what it allowed me to do, is to take the focus off what does everybody else need and look into myself. And I realized that the more I did that work, the healthier I was. And the more helpful I was to people, because when they needed me, then they could come find me, because people have agency. That's another thing I had to learn. And they weren't helpless. And I didn't have to help them unless they asked for it, because if they needed help, they could let me know.
yeah,
And so that was hard. And I think it's still work in progress, but it's easier for me to do it. I have children. It's easy for me to do it for them, because I'm like, I want you to be self-sufficient. And so why was it harder for me to do it for adults who clearly are self-sufficient? And so
yeah.
it's interesting. I think it's part of our socialization, part of my
Mhm.
socialization at least. And that was
Yeah,
hard, but I'm
yeah,
glad that I did
yeah.
that work.
And speak a little bit about other people's agency, if you will, and maybe some even practical sort of tips that you would share with people who are so used to taking everything on themselves and not asking for help and not wanting to appear weak, and and they're really really suffering because yeah, we think everybody else is so busy, right? And we think everybody else needs our help. But I love what you said, like other people have agency. What would you share with people?
I think that, I guess one of the experiences that kind of just comes to mind is that I would say I can't ask. I don't want to impose. I don't want to bother them. But then I don't know if I'm bothering them. I don't know if I'm imposing. I haven't even asked. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I would say the most important piece for me was asking, was actually clarifying, hey, could you do this? And also to give people permission to say no, so that it
Mm-hmm.
took that piece away from me of feeling like I was imposing. But learning that people had they had the right to say no. They would say no if they didn't need to, or if they needed to, and I could tell if they didn't want to say yes. So that there are people who like me are people pleasers who don't actually say no, but they are really not saying yes. I think it was also being okay with that and recognizing that there are other people who can help if the person before me can't. But yes, it was giving people the benefit of the doubt. You're a capable and a responsible person. And if you need something, you will tell me. Or if my question bothers you, you will let me know.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. That's a powerful lesson right there. And let's talk a little bit, most of the physician coaches and probably other coaches as well, that I've talked to, they have, kind of their own origin story, if you will, and they find that they become the coach that they really needed when they were struggling. And so, you have this drive to really coach and mentor people who want to be involved with research and don't have either a formal mentor, or they don't really kind of have a functional mentor. They may have one on paper, and they really need some support. So talk a little bit about that decision that you made of, I'm going to be the one who really helps show people that you can move forward with research.
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's really grown for me over the last 10 years of being a faculty member. And it was really crystallized for me just actually really a few months ago. So throughout the process, I mentored people. And one of my biggest and most important things in the mentoring process is creating safe spaces where people thrive. Because in some of my earlier mentoring experiences, I didn't always have safe spaces. I was productive, I did things, but I wasn't always feeling like I was safe. And so that was important for me. And so I had a mentee recently that I worked with to write a grant, and it was such an exhilarating experience for me. It was her first grant, and I think early on I could see that she hadn't done it before, because usually you feel like you have a lot more time than you do. And then you get to a few days before the grant and you're like, holy cow,
Uh,
what? But that's where we were. And it was important for me in that moment to give her grace of like, yep, I knew it would happen and it's okay because this happened to me too. And so a day before the grant was due, we literally had a 6-hour Zoom meeting where we just walked through her grant. I wasn't going to write it for her, but I walked her through it. And it was so
mm,
exhilarating for me. Like I literally finished from that meeting and I was so pumped. It wasn't like I had been on a 6-hour Zoom. It was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that everything I've ever, all the challenges I've ever been through, all the trouble, just all of a sudden they were just crystallized in that moment. And I just felt like it was all worth it. It was all worth it. So this one person can get help in a safe environment where she doesn't feel judged and she doesn't feel burdened and she doesn't feel like maybe
belittled.
she's not qualified. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
all of that. And I think that was the moment where I felt like this is what I really want to do for other people. Because you know what? We don't know what we're doing, but we're so capable. We don't need people belittling us. We don't need people judging us or making things harder than they already are. We have high standards for ourselves. And so when we are, there's really need for room for grace. And so that's one of the important things for me is to help people come to the realization of what they need and
Mhm.
then to negotiate for it. So that's one of our coaching strategies is helping people negotiate the resources they need so that they can
Mhm.
succeed. And that in general is not even part of our training as clinicians. And so
Mhm.
it having walked through that, having helped people do that, I realized that it's a space in which I do well and I want to help as many people as possible succeed if that's what they want to do.
Mm. That's so amazing. I'm so, I don't know, just excited about your journey because I think this is, I don't know, it just lights me up to hear people describe, like this was a struggle for me and I was told no, and I wasn't, I had doors kind of shut in my face and, I was made to feel like I couldn't do this. And, I persevered in whatever way that looked like for you. And now I'm opening doors for other people. I'm going to be someone who helps guide and support and, lets people know that yes, there's an option. Yes, you can do this. You have what you need. We need to, rally these resources and learn this and do this, but you got this. Like, what an amazing gift to people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was the gift that others gave me along the way.
Mhm.
And I finally saw people do it in a healthy way. I saw a lot of people do it in an unhealthy way. And to be honest, on the outside, they're successful, but I
Mhm.
saw people who were healthy. And
Yeah.
so I definitely want people to do it in the healthy way because then it means that they build environments and cultures of healthy success. And I think
Yeah.
there's so much need for healthy success.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. We can be successful and healthy. They're not mutually exclusive, but it takes intentionality to do both.
It does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We know the hustle side. We could all do that, but the healthy success. Okay. I'm gonna steal that one for you. Oh, this has been so great. And something that I think is really important for people who are out there listening to us talk and people who really find themselves resonating with your story. There's a physician out there who's listening and they've always wanted to do research and they've always wanted to be able to do this and they've run into a lot of no and kind of stopped, or they're experiencing burnout and they're really struggling with, a leadership position and they don't know what to do. For that person who's listening right now, what do you want them to know that you wish somebody could have told you in those spaces in your life?
That's a really, really good question. And thank you for asking that. I think the first thing I would want to say is you're not alone. There are people around you right now who are going through that and people who have come before you who are going through. And sometimes, especially in your own institutional microenvironment, you might feel like you're not safe to reach out and let people know the challenges that you're having. For that reason, it is so important to reach outside of that environment to get help. For some people, that looks like reaching outside the department, but for some people, to be safe, it looks like reaching outside the institution. Like, I don't want anybody who knows me here. And I
Mm-hmm,
think that's why it's
mm-hmm,
important and great to work with a coach who's not at your institution because there is no judgment and there is
yeah.
no chance of repercussion. And so I think that's important, is finding or creating those safe spaces where you can be yourself, where you can admit feelings of failure and defeat and not be judged, or not experience people saying, well, why don't you quit? Because that happens as well. Where you can be supported to be the best that you can be while not being pushed to do things that you're not comfortable or ready to do.
I love that. It's having a safe space and someone in your corner, right? And those things can go together, but I think they're important on their own as well.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Love that. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'm so glad that we were able to do this today. And I'd love for you to let my audience know where they can find you, where they can learn more about the work that you're doing, and how they can reach you if they are like, oh, that's exactly what I need.
Absolutely. So I'm definitely launching a new coaching program in August where I'm going to be teaching academic clinicians to negotiate for the position that they want to support their research.
I love that.
So definitely look out for that. In the meantime, I am taking one-on-one coaching clients right now, and I'm just working with people who kind of want to establish their research programs, whether or not they have a research mentor. I also have a podcast that's starting very soon, very soon to a platform near you, and so that I will actually start next month. But I'm on all the socials. I am on Facebook. I am on Instagram. And I am on LinkedIn as well. I'm not on Twitter, but I think other than that, you can find me. Please.
Great.
Yeah,
and we'll have links to all that in the show notes so people will be able to find you. I'm so excited to listen to your podcast. Do you have a name yet? Can we share that?
I do. It's the Clinician Researcher podcast.
The Clinician Researcher podcast. There you go.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining me today and for sharing your story. And, I'm just really, like I said, so excited about the work that you're doing because I think that there is definitely a need, for safe spaces to be able to navigate these particular academic medicine challenges, in sort of the research world, which is, I feel, like something that often clinical medicine folks are sort of excluded from. And I'm so glad to know that you disagree and you're saying, no, we don't need to be cut out of this. Just because I don't have a PhD doesn't mean I've not got things to do. So thank you for doing the work that you're doing. Thank you for coming on and chatting with me today. It's been really a pleasure.
I want to say thank you as well, Megan, for just creating this space for me and even for the space you create for your audience. I want to say that in medicine, we need so many more coaches like you who help people really create safe spaces where they can grow and thrive and find just new and better versions of themselves. So I'm excited for the work that you're doing and your community, and I want to thank you for doing it.
Well, thank you. All right, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in as always. And like I said, check out the show notes if you want to follow Dr. Toyosi or learn more about her coaching opportunities. And until next time, have a great week. Bye-bye. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you as always for listening. To learn more about my coaching programs, head to www.healthierforgood.com. And if you love this podcast, please drop us a review on iTunes or support the show by clicking the link in the show notes. Until next time, take care.